All right, guys, we are live, and tonight we're talking about relationships within your PowerApps applications. So, you may have heard about one to many relationships, one to one relationships, many to many relationships. So, we'll be talking about relationships and how it pertains to your applications. So, the last live stream that I did was building a simple task to do type of application that I have here on the screen. So if you're not familiar with this, or if you haven't caught that, you might want to go back and take a look at that video where we just stepped through and created this application that you see here on the screen. So right now, if I were to, here in Power Apps, I'm going to go over to my data sources on the left side of the screen here. And you'll see I only have one data source, and it's simply tasks. So what I'm going to do, just to give a review, or if you haven't seen that video, sort of step you through what we've done so far, I'm going to click on Edit Data. Okay, there we go. And you see here that we have a single table called Tasks. So we have a unique or a primary key here for this database table or SharePoint list. We have a title or a subject line for our task. We can see description, due date, priority, and if it's been completed or not. Okay, so this is what the table looks like. And you can see that from the application. Okay, all right. So let me bring up a different screen. I have another tab open where I've got some database diagrams. I really recommend that you use database diagrams or ERDs. ERD is a acronym, stands for Entity Relationship Diagram. Now, each database table that you have could be considered an entity. Okay, so when you're in software development, you're developing apps. When you're working with uh, things that your application is managing, you could call them entities. So in the software industry, they are called just that, entities. So whether you're creating database tables or you're working with it within your application, um, you work with these entities. So right now we have a single entity called tasks. Now, perhaps the next thing that we should do within our application is create another entity called projects, because typically tasks belong to a project. Okay, so for example, I might have some tasks here that I've added on my screen, and they might pertain to my YouTube channel. So I might create a project called uh, YouTube project, or PowerApps tutorial YouTube channel. Okay, so that'll be my project. So it's sort of a way of grouping tasks. Also, if you think of a project, if you have a project at work that needs to be completed, let's say within IT, let's say we have a project to install the new version of SQL Server on one of our servers. That could be a project. A project is typically something that needs to happen, and it involves many steps or tasks within that project to be completed. Typically speaking, within a project, you have stakeholders, you have a begin date, an end date, or a target due date for when that project is going to be completed. Okay, so so you see here, I have a task. So these are the fields that are currently in the application. Then I have another ERD diagram. I just wanted to show this sort of piecemeal, step by step. Okay, so we could have projects here, and again, with this round, just like the previous session where we started this application, I'm going to try to keep things somewhat simple. Okay, so here we have the project's entity. Okay, and SharePoint will automatically add an ID for us, like it did for tasks. It automatically adds a field called title. Okay, so that's going to be there. So we have a title over here for tasks, and we use that for a subject line. Here within projects, I'll use this title field for the name of the project. Okay, and I added on another field here for description. Okay, now if you look closely at this, and I've got this zoomed into 200% here. I added one field within this ERD diagram. Now, we didn't deal with ERD diagrams in the previous session. This is just something that I started. I like this website, Draw SQL. So if you go to drawsql.app, you can get to this website where you can build these ERD diagrams that look really nice. So SharePoint doesn't have this capability. So it's sort of nice to sort of supplement your tools with a website like this. Okay. You'll probably notice I've added a field here called project ID. Okay. And what that will allow us to do is associate a task with a project. Okay. So this relationship right here, look at that, many to one. So we've got one project that, or many tasks that belong to one project, I guess is how I would say it. You could say one to many, many to one. It's really the same thing. So one project could have many tasks, um, but you would have the business rule here. Okay, a task wouldn't belong to many projects. That really wouldn't make sense, would it? Now you might have two tasks that are similar, um, that might belong to different projects, but that's you would have a duplicate task there, and they would be assigned to different projects. Okay, so as you're building out your entities inside your application, you think about these relationships. Okay. And what I'd like to do tonight within this hour, maybe hour and a half, is also go over many to many relationships. Okay. Um, so, something that you could have with tasks is you could tag your tasks with tags. Okay, so if you use Gmail, um, uh, Gmail doesn't use folders to put emails, but you can tag your emails. Okay, so that's the similar concept. Also, giving another example of this, if you were to ever go out and create a blog and you've got a blog post, well, you could tag that blog post. So if you go out to powerappstutorial.com, that's my website. You're going to see a lot of my content out there, as well as here at YouTube. But well, YouTube has tags as well. Okay, but if you go to that, you'll see that I could create a blog post called how to do relationships within Power Apps. Okay, and then I could tag that. It's probably more of an intermediate type of topic, so I might tag it with intermediate. I might tag it with data since it has to do with data. But these tags, um, in regarding to blog posts, or in this case, in this application, we have tasks. So one task could be tagged with several tags, and then tags could be associated with many different topics or many different tasks. Okay, so you've got a many to many relationship. And there is there is no, um, you see how this line that we have here, a relationship between project and task? We could create another table, another entity out here called tags. Okay. And I have another diagram here on my last tab. I'm about to show you guys here in a moment. Okay. And I, with a many to many relationship, you just can't create another table out here and associate it directly to tasks, because a direct link is always, I'm going to open this up here. You got one to one. Okay. What's an example of a one to one? Let's say let's say you're writing an application for a hospital and you have employees or staff members. Okay. So you have nurses, doctors, you might have, cleaning staff, all kinds of different employees or staff members that work at a hospital, right? But you might have another table called doctors or doctor information. So for those within the employee table that are doctors, you might want to store additional information. Okay, so their provider information, their licensing information, that type of thing. Not every single staff member is a doctor, but for those that are, we want to store additional doctor type of information, physician information, provider information into a different table. Um, and where that relationship links up, where the data links up, there's always a one-to-one relationship. One doctor's over here and his information is over here in this other table. Okay, it's not going to be one doctor has multiple physician numbers or something along those lines. It's always going to be a one-to-one relationship. Okay, and a lot of times when you think about a one-to-one relationship, you might as well just put it all on one table. But in the case of where you've got staff and you got doctors, or there's a bunch of other information you might store that doesn't apply to everybody. that might be a good case to do a one-to-one. Okay, so at least when I brought up this pop up here on this website, one-to-one, I at least wanted to mention that the reason why you would do it. Um, we don't have any reason to do it within this application, and if I did, I would just put it all in one table. Okay, so we've got one to many and many to one. So if I wanted this many part to be on the other side, I would click on this first and it should reverse it. Okay. But you see the three lines on this side? So that always means the many. Sometimes in diagrams, you'll have a one and with a line, and then on the many, you'll have like an eight sitting on its side, which represents infinity. Okay. So you could have one project that has an infinite amount of tasks, theoretically. You just keep adding to those tasks. Okay. Um, but you notice in this relationship here, there's not a relationship to add here, many to many. So if I add tasks or tags over here onto the side of tasks, um, there's no way to add a many to many relationship. And that's because within a relational database system where you create database tables like this, it always has to be either one to one or one to many. Um, what you have to do is create a mapping table in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to bring up this other tab here. So here are our tasks. Okay, and then we've got tags over here. Okay, and then we've got a mapping table in the middle called tasks tags. Okay, so you've got, and you're going to see this as we step through the application. Okay, of what kind of data would be stored in each of these tables. Okay, so tags could be something like a YouTube channel. I could have a tag for home, so tasks I need to complete at home, tasks that I need to do at work, tasks that I need to do outdoors. Maybe I need to mow the lawn and do some lawn care or some shrubbery work or whatever. So I could tag those differently. But tasks could have multiple tags, and multiple tags can be associated with many tasks. So that's a many to many relationship. Again, you need a mapping table in the middle like this. And typically, what I do is I take one of the words or the main word out of the first table and the word out of the other table out of the other many relationship and combine them. Okay. And one of my friends that I work with, he actually puts in the word map in here. So he would call this task tags map or mapping, something along those lines. But if I see this, I understand just based on how I name tables that's what's going on there. It's a mapping table. So so you have a logical relationship. If you read ERD diagrams here, you can tell that. Well, actually, look at this here. This many to one. This should be one to many. Okay, so that mapping table so this tag ID maps over to this ID. This task ID goes over here to this ID. Okay, and in both cases, you got the many relationship in the mapping table. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that. Okay. So, hey, if you're getting anything helpful out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel and lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated. All right, keeping my eye on the comment section. This is a live stream, so I like to interact with you guys. So CA, I'm sure is short for something. Great topic. Well, thanks CA. Thanks for stopping by and interacting with me here on the live stream. If you guys have any questions, comments as I'm going through, as I just ask that it actually pertains to what I'm talking to tonight. I don't want to talk about some other topic that I'd want to create a completely separate video for, of course, right? So as long as it's on topic, I'll try to keep my eye on the comments here and keep up with you guys. Okay. So this is what we will need. So we already have tasks out there, but we need to create these other tables. Okay. So let's actually get to work and actually start building this stuff so you can see how this works in a practical way. Okay. So I'm going to go back over to SharePoint. Okay. And what we'll do here, I'm going to click on Site Contents within SharePoint. Now, keep in mind, you could be building this with Dataverse. You could be building this with SQL Server. Here we're using SharePoint. 70% of you, according to a poll, 70% of you use SharePoint. That might be because of licensing issues or your IT department won't open it up for you. So a lot of times you're sort of stuck with SharePoint. So if you can do it in SharePoint, you can do it in Dataverse. And if you have those SQL Server skills, you'll probably understand how to translate that over as well. Okay. So I'm going to create a new table. Okay. I'm going to create a blank list. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these diagrams up on another screen here so I can look at those as I build those out. I'll keep that one there. All right. So I'm going to call this simply projects. Yep. And this is going to be the really simple one here. Now, what I always like to do when I create a new SharePoint list, I always go in here. I'm going to click on show or hide column. Now, it looks like I'm in the way here. So let me hide myself. Okay. So it says show or hide columns. So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to click on ID. I'm going to bring ID to the very top. Okay. Click apply. I always like to see my primary key there. Okay. So we've got the title of our project. So I'm going to add in another column here and I'm going to click on multiple lines of text. Okay, because this is going to be a description. Okay, so I'm going to say description, multiple lines of text, and I'm going to click on save. Very good. So we've got that. So now that we have that created, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a good link to this SharePoint site by clicking on this TL square in the upper right corner. And that's going to open up a new tab. And I'm just going to get a link to this SharePoint site. And then within Power Apps, I'm going to go over to data. I'm going to go down to connectors. I'm going to go look for SharePoint. Okay. There's SharePoint. And if there's more than one, it's okay. Just click on the first one. Okay. I'm going to paste that, click connect. And look at that. There is projects. So we'll add that in. All right. So let's focus here. Let me bring up my camera again here. Let's focus on just doing something simple, working with these projects, okay? So for each of these tasks here, we should have a project, one project associated with it, okay? So here on the screen, you can see that I already have a drop-down list for the priorities, okay? Now what I'll do is I'll copy and paste that drop-down list, and I can just add it right here. Maybe make it a little longer. And the height of this first drop down, it was 40, and then it's still 40. That's good. Sometimes when I move things around, I change the height. Okay, so what I'm going to do for the data source for this drop down is I'm going to click on items, or you can select items from this drop down on the left side, upper left corner. Okay. And instead of having hard coded values like we did for the priority, I'm going to type in projects. Okay. Now, what I might do just to sort of get things started now, what we could do is I could create a projects screen and have an add, edit, delete, um, or what's called a CRUD screen. CRUD is an acronym. So you can create, you can read, you can update, you can delete. So a CRUD screen is a simple screen that allows you to add, edit, delete, and of course, view records within a single table. Okay. We could do that, but we've already sort of covered how to do that. We could create a screen just like this and do all that. And if I were to do that right now, it'd probably take, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. We could probably shorten it by creating a screen with a form. And typically I don't use forms within applications, but you could do that. Nothing wrong with that. You create a little admin screen for that. But let's go over here and add in just a few records here. So the title for project, I'm going to call this, let's see, trying to think of project names that would be good for tasks here. Um, you know, A good example of a project might be if my wife Nicole wants me to do some type of a project, let's say remodel, um, remodel kitchen. Okay, so that could be a project. Okay, and then she could go into the application and add tasks that I need to do in order to remodel the kitchen, or I might know the steps that I need to do that. Um, Another example could be um, create task list application. Okay. So that's actually a project that I'm working on. Okay. And okay, so this is good. I'm going to click save. Okay. So that would be an example of a project. Um, and I sort of like that remodel. Kitchen. Add that. Now, I think what I will do, put in description. Okay. Save. I see a comment. David. Hello, everyone. Hello, David. Thanks for joining us. And so I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to add a description. Um, this is a very important project for me to demo out on YouTube. Okay. I believe SharePoint will automatically save that for us. So I'm going to click on the X. Okay. So now perhaps if this project that I'm building with you guys here um, becomes a very popular one, perhaps that we will create our CRUD screen for the projects. But so if we go over here within Power Apps, I'll open up the data sources and I'll do a refresh on projects. Okay. And then what we should see if I run this, I should see, look at that, 2 items, but there's nothing there. Okay. So we got to like figure out what's going on with that. Okay. So for a drop down, we have a property called value. Okay. So I can move this down and we could go find title. Okay. Very good. So we got create test this list application or remodel kitchen. Okay. Perhaps projects don't change very often. Okay. But maybe they do. Um, Something else we can do for this drop down is we could set it up so that it doesn't have to contain a value. And I'm looking for that property here that would allow us to have a blank value in there. Um, let's see here. I know for default we don't want. I think what I'll do is I'll just comment this. This is leftover stuff from the priority drop down list that we had before. Okay. Um, I think it might be called allow. Yeah, allow empty selection. Okay. I don't really see that on the side. So if you're looking for a property for a control and you don't see it on the right side, go over here to the upper left corner, this little drop down. Okay. And all the properties are going to be over there. I'm going to set this to true. Okay. So if I want nothing select, I'm gonna select that item again, and then it's gonna be empty. Okay. So going back in here for default, um, I think maybe we'll just mess with that a little bit later. Um, okay, or we'll revisit that later in the video. Okay. So we've got 2 projects there. Okay. And what we want to do whenever we save a task, okay, what we want to do, let's go into that save button that we've set up last week. Okay, so we open up the code here for the save button, and we'll be looking for a project ID. So let's go back and look at our ERD diagram real quick here. Okay, so we have a project ID. Now the question is, did we actually add that um, this field here? This ID is called a primary key. So project has a primary called ID. Okay, tasks have a primary key called ID as well. What is a key called when it relates to another? This ID matches or it gets matched up with this project ID. What is this called over here? It's not called a primary key, it's called a foreign key. Okay. So this foreign key is how we match up, how we cross-reference these two tables. Okay. So do we have that foreign key created in tasks? So let's go over here and take a look. We don't need that tab anymore. I'm going to go into tasks. I'm going to go into settings and create a new column. Okay. Now this will be called project ID. Make that a number. And we really don't need to do anything with any more. Just type in the name project ID and have it a number. We'll scroll down to the very bottom. We'll click OK. Right. So you see it's right there. Now, when I look at that data within SharePoint, I'm going to click on tasks here at the top. Okay, and we see all of our data here. Now, what I'd like to do, see we got the project ID right here. Okay, nothing's associated yet, but there will be. Okay, so we'll go back over here. Now, whenever you change your database schema, have you ever heard that word schema? So here is what we're looking at here, this ERD diagram. Well, this is the ERD diagram, but it's representing something called the schema, the database schema. So the database schema are all your table names and the columns within them and how they relate, all that type of information, not the visual representation, but the all that how everything is set up and configured in your database. It's called a schema. So if you ever hear me say schema, now you know what I mean by that. Okay. So when you change your schema within PowerApps does not automatically know about that. Okay. So what you need to do is go to the table that changed and click on the ellipsis, the three dots, hit refresh, and it will go and refresh the schema and also refresh the data. So if there were additional records that were added, it would become aware of those new records or any changes there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a column because we're going to specify another field here, project ID. Now we're going to reference this drop-down list. Now, because we're referencing a control in code like this, we should always give it a meaningful name. So I'm going to click on that drop-down list. Okay. I'm going to get rid of that coding window and I'm going to call it DRP projects. Okay. I'm keeping an eye on the comments here. So Nevin says, "Hi Darren, love the topic. I've always battled with creating relationships between two SharePoint lists. Looking forward to how you tackle this in the session." Awesome, awesome to have you. And yeah, thanks for letting me know where you're at. And as I'm presenting this, if you guys have any questions or comments, let me know. Okay. So just to let you know, guys, sort of the context of me building this. Um, this content is a part of something that I had started about a year ago. And let me tell you more about that. Have you noticed when you try to learn something new, like Power Apps, usually takes you a few months of trial and error and learning and going through the learning curve and actually learning the ins and outs of a new topic like Power Apps? Well, I have just the thing for you guys that will help you condense, let's say, 6 months of struggling, going through that learning curve and condensing it down into a day or two. And I call it the Jumpstart course. And I've got links down in the description below if you're interested. Otherwise, check out all the other videos I have here on YouTube. All right, so I mentioned that, right now you're accessing this live stream over YouTube or you're watching a replay of it. And what I wanted to mention was that for those of you who have purchased the Jumpstart course, if you're trying to build this application right here, and let's say you get stuck, okay? I created this course as a way to get people unstuck as they're in the sort of beginning stages of learning Power Apps. So what I wanted to do is extend help to those of you who have purchased the course. The course is actually quite cheap. So if you click on the link down below and check out, you can see the price right away. You can see it's very cheap. Is that I will be providing Zoom call support So if you guys, so I might be providing that, once a week or once a month. Just depends upon the, um, the volume of questions or the help that is asked for. Okay, so I wanted to mention that. And so if you are stuck, I recommend, purchasing that, and then we can, get things squared away. Okay, so all right. Also, um, okay, so we have the drop down. So we named it DRP projects. Okay. Um, and I'm taking keeping an eye on the comments here. Okay, very good. So for this drop down list, we have a listing of our projects. We've named this because we were in the button over here for the save. I'm going to expand this. Okay, so now I'm going to type DRP projects. Very good. Now, the project, you know what the project names are, right? So if I were to hold down Alt and click on this first, create a task list application. If I just wanted the text that's being displayed, okay, in that drop down list, I would do what I did with the previous line of code here, okay, that says, drop down dot selected value. I'm sorry, selected text dot value. Okay, that would allow us to get at that text. In this case, what we want to do is grab the ID from that drop down. Okay. So in that case, instead of saying dot selected text, we're going to say dot selected. Okay, dot selected. Now, once you say dot selected, you're going to get the currently selected item within that drop down list. You're actually accessing the whole record within that database table. Okay. So from here, you could say dot ID and get at the primary key from that table. Okay. Now I do have so I do have another video out there on my YouTube channel called Database Relationships, and I talk about one to many relationships. It was actually a very short type of video format. This we're actually digging in and actually building it step by step. Um, and I have these visuals. If you want to check it out, just go to YouTube and type in Darren Neese relationships, and it probably come right up to the top. Okay, so I talk about the visuals between the one and the many relationships. So if you want to watch that too, that might sort of drive it home if there's any confusion there. Okay, but we're going to take that ID from the projects table. Let me bring this down. So right now we've got two records. It's going to grab the ID of one and it's going to drop it in here into this project ID. Okay, for one of the tasks. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll drop that over there. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. And let me see here. Create task list application. Do we have any new tasks? Well, um, let's create a new record. Okay, and what I expected or what a user would expect is for this to be blank, and we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so go over many to many relationships. Okay, so it's something I still need to do here in this video. Okay, so I'm going to say create new task application, and I'm going to make this a high type of priority, and this defaults to the current date. That's good. Okay, I might say this is important. I'm going to click save. Hopefully the code works. Cross your fingers. All right, look at that. Go over many to many relationships. This is important. Okay, so the question is, if we go over to our database, is that data going to be in there? Okay, so if we go to site contents and we go into projects, okay, so here are our two projects. Very good. I'm going to go back into, and you see, I'm going to go back in there. Create task list application has an ID of one. Okay, so if we go into site contents, go into tasks, we have a new record. You see these little three lines here? That means a new record. So SharePoint's trying to help us out and let us know that's a new record. And if I scroll down over here to the right side, look at this. We've got an ID of one. Okay, so that's what we were expecting. Okay, so now the question is, down here, as we see all of our tasks, perhaps we might want to see what project each of these tasks are in. Okay, so let's do something here. Let's make this template size bigger. So this is a vertical gallery. It goes straight down. And if you change the template size property, you see the template size over here on the right side. If I move my cursor over, it says template size and it's set to 60. If we change that to more like 100, it'll give us a little more space. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these controls here. Okay. And I'll make sure they all have the same height, maybe 60. And also make sure their Y is all 0. So they're all aligned at the top. Okay, now I'm going to just move this down a little bit here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new label in here that will display our project. Okay. That big. Okay. So right now it's just displaying title. Let's put in here project ID. Okay. Run this and scroll around. Okay, so the only one that has a project associated with this task is this one right here that we set. Okay, that's good. But what use is just showing a one here? A user isn't going to care one, like one. Um, what exactly is going on with that? In fact, what we could do is we could say we could use a string literal. When you say string within software development, you're talking about a string of characters. So we could say project colon, maybe a space in there. Okay. So as we scroll down, project is a one. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to go find out what the project name is of the project that has the ID of one. Okay. Does anybody know what we would do here? Instead of displaying the number, what we do to get the project's name? Well, we need to go look it up, right? So there is a function here in PowerApps called lookup. Okay, so this is all case sensitive. So capital L, okay, capital U P, okay, and lookup takes 2 to 3 parameters based on how you're using it. Okay, so the first parameter is always the data source. So where do we want to go look this up at? Well, it's going to be over in projects. We're going to go over to the projects table to look it up. And then we're going to separate our parameters we're passing into this lookup function with commas. Okay. Now, the second parameter is criteria. Okay. So the criteria, okay, so if we go over here, I'm going to go into site contents and I'm going to go look at projects. So we're asking PowerApps to go look up something within this table. And we told it it's projects. So that's the very first thing we told it. Hey, go over to projects and look this up. The second thing is, what's the criteria? Lookup returns a single record, okay? Or the first record it finds with the criteria that you give it, okay? So if I say, hey, go find the project that has an ID of one, or go find the project that has ID two, okay? So the first time it comes across that, it's gonna find it and then return that record, okay? So going back over to PowerApps, the criteria is where the ID equals this item. So you guys know what this item is. You can use that within a gallery to get at the current record within the gallery. Okay. So we're accessing the project ID still. Okay. So if we just give lookup 2 parameters, it's going to return that record. Okay. At this point, now that we have the record, we could say dot title, and it should return it. So let's test that. So if I run this and scroll down, look at this. Project, create task list application. So that did work, okay? That did work. Now, what I mentioned before with lookup is that you could have 3 parameters. So this is one way you can access a single value out of a record, okay? So instead of doing that there, you could provide a third parameter, title, which is the exact column value that you want to return. And in this case, it would actually return that value, whatever is in title. Okay. So if you just gave it 2 parameters, it's going to return a record. If you provide that third parameter, it's just going to return a single value like text, okay, or like a number, okay. If it's Boolean, yes, no, true, false, yes, no, it's going to be true. It's going to return a Boolean type of value, okay. So that's what we needed to do, title. Okay, now what we might want to do, the last live stream we had here was for we learned to use the if function. Okay, so the if function, we could say if whatever is returned, okay, if whatever is returned is blank, so we could say is blank, okay, and put parentheses around that. If whatever the lookup returns is blank, then you know what? We could probably just say something like not found or no project associated. Okay, that would be good. Otherwise, go get the value if it's not blank. Okay. Well, we just got it over here, right? And so in a way, you sort of do a lookup again. Okay. Now you might think to yourself, oh, we're doing two lookups for the same thing, all within the same code. Okay. Well, there is a little bit of a intermediate thing and something additional you could do here that would make it a little more efficient, and that's called the with function. We could use the with. I really didn't want to cover it tonight, but I just wanted to mention it in case any of you were sort of bugging you, like, why are we doing two lookups? Well, perhaps we'll cover the with in a separate session. Okay. Um, and how much time are we? So we're at 40. Yeah. So this is already is going to take quite a bit of time here. Okay. So I'm going to leave it as is. Okay. So if I run this, you see project, no project associated. Okay. Now this all just sort of looks like it runs together. I'm going to do a little bit of styling here. So I'm going to make the background black. That doesn't look very good. It looks like a redacted document from the government or something. I'm going to make the foreground color, the color to be white. And maybe that black color is a little too much. We might make that a little lighter, perhaps. Okay, that looks a little better. Okay, I'm gonna run it. Okay, so okay. Now, one thing I wanted to cover, and before we're done, either uh, perhaps this will be more of a series, and we'll do more exploration with the with function. Okay, so here for the default, remember, let's say if we run this and click on add new record, you see how everything is reset except this drop down. Okay, what we need to do is set up, okay, set up the default so that if it's a new record, we just want an empty string here. Okay, that should do that. Otherwise, otherwise we need to get at the project ID. Okay. Yeah. So now the default for the, now I know project ID isn't going to work here, but I need to sort of step through this. Okay. Um, the default, whatever you put in default, needs to match what's being displayed in the drop down list. And what we have, okay, for all these other controls, like say for this text box, we reference the gallery down here, dot selected dot title. Okay. So if we select that first record, it should be pulling in that data here. So that's what I do here. So down here, instead of getting that project ID, what we need to do is that lookup, like just like we did down here in this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab this. We're going to do the lookup again here. And I'm going to paste it. Let me open this up. So I'm going to grab this. What was in there before, the project ID. And you don't really use the this item outside your gallery. And we're outside the gallery now. So we're not going to use the this item. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to paste in gallery. If I'm going to click on format text, so this is more easier to read here. I might actually zoom in so you guys can see the code a little better too. Okay. So I'm going to do a lookup, whatever the title is, and that should match everything up for us. Okay. So I clicked on a new record and now it's blanked out, which is what we're looking for. Now, if I click on the second row, I'm like, I don't mean to add a new record. Let's just edit the second record. I click on it. Um, because there's no project associated, it's not going to pull anything up. If I scroll down and click on that last row, it's going to pull that up. Okay, so everything's working right. Okay, so let's add in what was the other item here? Okay, so I don't have any tasks in here regarding um, remodeling the kitchen. Okay, so let's add a new record. And one of the tasks I need is say go to Home Depot to pick up um, supplies. That might be a task. So we need to go pick up supplies, or just simply say pick up supplies. And then I could make up my mind on what hardware store I would go to pick up those supplies. Okay. And description might be either Lowe's or Home Depot. Okay. And I'm going to set this up for remodel kitchen. And I'm going to set this to be a ways out, at least a month out. Okay. And I'm going to say this is going to be a low priority. I'm going to remodel the kitchen just as I have time. I'm not really sure what we're going to do while I'm remodeling the kitchen. Maybe we'll eat from paper plates or something, or order pizza. So I'm going to click on save. Okay, so that should add a new record down here. Okay, and has the project associated with it. Okay, so all right, very good. Now, something I don't like about how everything looks here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You zoom out for the browser. Okay. And then zoom in here a little bit. Now, what I can do is I can take all these controls, sort of move them around. I'm going to move them all the way up here and make this gallery a bit bigger. Okay. Now, what I like with my galleries is I like to have little dividers with everything. Okay. So, what I might do here is for the color, let's change this to be a yeah, gray color there. Okay. And then I like to make the template padding to be either 1 or 2. I'm gonna say 2. See how that looks? That looks a little better. Okay. Okay, very good. And then, I like that. Okay. It could look a lot better, but, just trying to keep things simple here. All right. Now, is there anything else that we need to do for the one-to-many relationship? Now, um, it looks like, maybe we got maybe 10 minutes for the live stream. I don't like to go too much over an hour. Um, okay, so what I'm going to do here, just to sort of show you what we could do to make this more of a complete app, is we could create a new screen. So this one, this screen here is just called screen one. Let's give this screen a better name, okay? And we'll call this ask list screen. Now you see from my screens, I'm going to hit Control 0, and that should zoom out or zoom in, so it's perfectly zoomed there. You should name your screens so they're very human readable. They're not meant to be named like you would name your controls. Okay, so some people will say SCR for screen, and they'll won't have any spaces in there, thinking that's a good screen name, and it would be. But PowerApps actually exposes the screen name for screen readers where people have accessibility issues. So, like, let's say somebody is blind, they can't read, but they have a screen reader. So, if they hover over a screen or a new screen comes up, it will actually read that out. If you have a non human readable screen name, it might spell it out and it's just not as user friendly. So, this is actually a recommended Microsoft recommended practice to name your screens like this. Okay. So, let's add in a new screen here, and we'll call this Manage Project Screen. Okay. Now, what we would do here, I think what I'm going to do is one of my videos I did last week was about the patch function. And pretty much I encourage people to use the patch function over using forms. And so I think what I might do to save time, and perhaps a lot of you do use forms. Okay, we did not use a form here at all. In fact, what there's a lot of reasons why I don't like forms. But one of the things is that it's really hard to get your edit screen to look exactly how you like it to look within a form. Okay. But if you're in a hurry and you're building out a CRUD screen, let's say for application administrators, so people who are using this application, they need to go in and see all the tasks. They might need to add, edit, delete tasks, and go and mark them as complete, all that type of stuff, right? But let's say there's application administrators that manage this application, or you, the developer who's creating this application, you're the person that should be adding, editing, deleting projects. Okay. And maybe it's just one or two users that access. Um, okay, I don't know what it's doing there. Hopefully, it didn't delete what I had going on. That was a little weird. Okay, so I'm gonna click on override, I guess. That was really strange. Um, it goes to show you, I have a saying which is save early and save often. Okay, so I did lose some stuff. I didn't lose much, but it goes to show you whenever you do something, hit Control S. So it creates a restore point. Okay. Okay. So David, I see your comment, and that's a good comment. I might get to that later. I do see Nevin's comment. Is there a way to group a single project and all the related tasks one below the other? Okay, so Nevin, let me mention something that we could do, which is have um, a drop down filter somewhere on the screen, usually on the top, maybe apart from all these other controls, which we can filter all of these things. Okay. Something that we could do, we could click on one of these tasks and it could go to a different screen where it's got all these controls that we have here at the top. These could actually be on a completely separate screen. Okay. And as your screens get more complex, you add more features to it. You might want to break things up as much as you can. Okay. Um, we'll probably actually do that as we build onto this application. Okay. And then in that case, we could just have a one drop down at the top called projects, and you select one of your projects, and then you'd only be looking at tasks for that project. So my question to you, Nevin, is that what you're talking about? And if that's the case, absolutely. And we might get there eventually. Okay. Okay. So something else I would say here is, say, would you like a copy of this app? Well, I have a link down in the video description below. If you click on it, you can access my free resources page. So click on that link to access this file, this MS app file. All right, now we're not done yet, guys, but I just wanted to mention that that I'm making these project files available. Okay, so I'm gonna show. Okay, so Nevin says, "Thank you, Darren. That makes sense." So okay, so it sounds like that is what you mean. Okay, very good. So now I'm gonna go in and create a new screen here. Okay, and again, I'm gonna call this project management screen. Okay. And I'm going to use a form here, guys, but I'm only using it to save time for us. Okay. You guys already know how to use the patch function. I covered that last week, and you've got a good example of a patch here within the button. Okay. So if I go click on select, you guys have seen this. We've been working with that tonight, right? And we also have a patch over here on this little checkbox. If you select the checkbox on check, we change the completed field on if it's that has been checked off or not. Okay. Yeah. So Ahmed said, I really was wondering how to make many-to-many relationships between SharePoint lists and Power Apps. Okay. So that is going to be the next thing that we cover. Okay. So that will be in the next live session. We'll go over many-to-many relationships. Okay. And so we will get through all of this. So we're going to create tags for our tasks, and we're going to create this many-to-many relationship here. Okay. Now, let's sort of finish this off. I'm going to add over a gallery. And so let's see here, blank vertical. Always go with blank verticals here. And we're going to tie this up with projects. Okay. I really don't like just going straight into SharePoint or the data and start modifying data directly. Okay, so always like to have a good screen that allows us to modify the data. So I'm going to add in a label here. Okay, there's the title. And let's make this a little smaller and let's give this a border. Okay. Not bad. And what I'll do is I'll just do some just general stuff in here I like to do with a gallery. I give it a dark color for a background, which actually just becomes little grid lines. Okay. And then for the template fill property, I write an if statement. I say, well, if this item dot is selected, which will give us a true or false value, if it's selected or not. If it's selected, we'll say light yellow. Otherwise, I want it to be white. Okay. And I always like to make sure that template padding is 2. Okay. Now I'm going to hide that comment on the screen there. Very good. Now I'm going to add over, I'm going to do something I never do. Uh, I rarely do. Okay. So we'll add in, see, I don't even know where it's at. Where are the forms? Okay. Edit form. Now, if you are going to use a form, always use an edit form. Don't ever use a display form because a display form can only display. An edit form can display and edit. So if you ever change your mind, you'd have to rip it all out and start from scratch. So I don't know why they offer 2 different ones. Might as well just create, offer one that does both. But all right, so I'm gonna tie that up to projects. Okay, very good. Now I'm gonna go in and edit the fields for this form, and I always like to give things borders. So I'm gonna give it a border or 2. The edit fields, I'm going to take out attachments. I'm going to remove that. Um, and then, so I've just got title and description. And then I'm going to make the column just 1, make it very straightforward here. And I'm going to add a button. Okay, there's my buttons here. So I have a button down here for save. And we'll also have a button down here to add a new one. Okay. So I'm going to double click on this button. Okay. And I'm going to say save. This button, I'm going to double click and say add new. So this form name should be called something like FRM projects. And under save, what I'm going to say is submit form FRM projects. That's what it will do. And then for add new, what I'll do is I will call this new form FRM projects. Okay. The save button will submit it. Add new will sort of blank it out and go from there. Okay. So what I will do here is I will set this thing up to look at this gallery over here. Okay. So this gallery will be gal projects. Okay. So we can reference that. And then over here on this form, what we're going to do is see this default mode is set up for edit. That's good. And then what we want to do is set up the default record that the form is going to look at. Okay. So over here in advance, I'm going to go look for default. Is that right? Or is it, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to be looking for item, which is right here. So yeah, so I don't, yeah, there's no default. There's default mode. So it goes to show you if you don't use something regularly, you don't always have it at the top of your mind here. So for item, I'm going to say gallery projects dot selected. Whatever record is selected out of the gallery is the one that we're going to pull up there. So I'm going to run this. And as I click on the different item within the gallery, it's going to pull that record up. Now, if I want to add in a new project, I'm going to say take vacation to Universal Orlando, Florida. Okay. And then here, make sure it isn't snowing in Orlando before you go. I'm going to hit save, and that should add it there. Okay, very good. Now I live in Orlando, and I know some of you other parts of the country. It's not only very cold, but it is snowing a lot up north right now. So very cool. All right, so now we got 3 projects, okay? So now we don't have to go over to SharePoint and, mess around with that, okay? All right, so we've got that. All right, so I'm gonna hit Control S to save this so I don't lose that work, okay? I'm gonna go back over to this tree view, okay? Right. So what do we have here? We've added in a project dropdown. We understand database relationships. We understand ERDs. We understand schemas. We understand one-to-ones, one-to-many, and also many-to-many, which we'll be covering next. So looking at the comments, I'm watching for any comments, any questions to answer. Guys, for some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry, click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video, which you probably don't want. Thanks.